They say kindness is a seed. But let me ask you something. If you saw a starving boy, ribs sharp like broken fences, lips cracked like old earth, his hands shaking from hunger, would you stop? Would you give him food from your plate? Or would you clutch your bag tighter and walk away? Most people would walk away. They'd whisper, "Don't go near him. He looks dangerous." They'd cross the street. They'd act like he wasn't even human. But that evening in Lagos, as the call to Maghrib prayer echoed through the streets, a woman carrying her own bag of groceries stopped, and for the first time in that boy's life, someone looked at him. Her name was Miriam, a schoolteacher, widowed, mother of no one, yet mother to every child who passed through her classroom. People called her Madam Miriam. But that day she was just a woman who couldn't ignore a shadow on the ground, because there by the market gate, a boy was curled up. His body looked like paper folded too many times. His eyes weren't blinking, his chest barely moved, and his hands clutched a piece of cardboard. On it, 3 words in shaky writing: "Please feed me." His name was Samir. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. He drank dirty water from potholes. He chewed on plastic, just to trick his stomach into silence. But what hurt more than hunger was how people stepped over him. How no one said his name. How no one even asked if he had one. Miriam knelt beside him. She didn't cover her nose. She didn't step back. She opened her grocery bag and placed a small loaf of bread in his hand, then a bottle of clean water, then her own scarf to wipe his lips. "Eat, my son," she whispered. "Allah sees you. I see you." The boy's fingers trembled. He pressed the bread to his chest before taking a bite, as if afraid it would vanish. And when he looked at her, tears rolled down his dirt-streaked cheeks. No words, just tears. Because in a world that only gave him hunger, someone gave him dignity. From that night on, Miriam never walked home without carrying an extra bag. Rice, beans, sometimes just bananas. And every evening she found Samir, and every evening she fed him. Neighbors laughed. "Why waste food on a street rat?" they sneered. But Miriam only smiled and said, "Every child I feed adds a prayer to my plate." Weeks turned to months. Samir grew stronger. He learned to smile again. He carried her bags. He fetched water. He even began sitting at the back of her classroom just to listen. No books, no shoes, just ears hungry for words. And Miriam let him stay because she saw something in his eyes, not just pain, but fire. Yet one day, Samir disappeared. No note, no goodbye. The spot near the market gate was empty. The bread she carried that day remained in her hand. And Miriam wept on her way home. Was he sick? Was he taken? Did hunger finally win? She prayed for him every night. But years passed, and the boy she called my son never returned. Until one morning, 7 years later, at her small school, where the roof still leaked when it rained, a black car pulled up. The kind of car you only see in front of embassies. Neighbors gathered. Children gasped. Teachers froze. And from the back seat stepped a man in a dark suit. Tall, confident. His shoes shone like glass. His watch glinted like sun on water. But his eyes, those were the same. The same eyes Miriam had once wiped with her scarf. The same eyes that had once begged silently for bread. He smiled. "Mama," he said softly, "did you think I forgot you?" Miriam's bag dropped from her hand. Her knees weakened, because standing before her was Samir, no longer starving, no longer forgotten, but a man the world now whispered about, a billionaire. But why had he returned? What did he carry in his heart? Hunger for revenge or gratitude for mercy? And what he revealed next would test everything Miriam thought she knew about love, about loss, and about what it really means to save someone. 2 years later, Miriam stood in her small kitchen, holding a cracked ceramic cup. It wasn't fine china, just an old cup her late husband once used for morning tea. The rim was chipped, the glaze faded, but to her, it felt heavier than glass, because every time she poured tea into it, She remembered the boy who once sat on her doorstep, hungry, shivering, whispering, "Thank you," with every sip. The boy who vanished. The boy no one believed even existed. "Madam." A neighbor's son called from the gate, voice trembling. "There's someone outside. He says he knows you." Miriam barely looked up. "Name?" The boy hesitated. "He said to tell you. I'm the child of the cardboard sign." Her heart froze. The cup slipped from her hand and shattered. She didn't stop to wear her slippers. She rushed barefoot across the courtyard, her breath breaking, her hands trembling. The moment the gate opened, she almost didn't recognize him. Samir was taller now, still lean, still carrying the shadow of hunger on his face. But his shoulders were steady. His eyes no longer darted like a frightened boy. They held calm, strength, fire. In one hand, he carried a leather notebook, and in the other, a folded piece of cardboard. The same one, the words still faint, smudged by rain. "Please feed me." Miriam's lips quivered. "Samir!" He nodded once. Her knees gave way, and she fell to the ground, covering her face as tears poured like rain. "Why did you leave?" she whispered through sobs. "I didn't leave," he said quietly. "I was taken." Her throat tightened. "By who?" His gaze dropped. "By those who said they wanted to help me. But they wanted something else. They wanted me silent." Miriam's heart pounded. Silent about what? He lifted the notebook and handed it to her. Inside were pages scribbled in shaky writing. Lists of names, dates, numbers, and on nearly every page, the same sentence, repeated over and over like a wound. "They eat while we starve." Miriam turned the last page. Her own school's name was written there. Her hands shook. Her breath came short. "What is this, Samir?" she asked, her voice breaking. But Samir didn't answer. He only said, in a voice like thunder, "You gave me food, Mama, but they gave me hunger. And the ones behind it were closer than you think." That night, Miriam couldn't sleep. She opened her late husband's old trunk. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were faded files from when he was alive, receipts, contracts, donation slips. And there, hidden between the papers, she found it. A deal signed under her own school's name. It showed a massive donation, funds meant for feeding orphans. Rerouted, not once, not twice, but dozens of times, to shell companies, to fake charities, to pockets lined with power. Her name was on the receipts, but she had never signed them. Her heart shook. Her life's work, her school, her shelter, her reputation, had been built on the bones of lies. And the money that vanished, it was the very money she had begged donors for, to feed children like Samir. Instead, it had starved them, and the child she thought she saved was the proof of everything stolen. Morning came. Miriam's hand still shook as she prepared for class, but her eyes kept wandering to the notebook Samir left behind. The children greeted her, their voices full of laughter, but Miriam heard only echoes. Did I teach them on stolen bread? Did I clothe them with money meant for others? At midday, her assistant teacher entered. "Madam, someone waits outside." Her breath caught. "Who?" The assistant's voice dropped low. He said, "Tell her the boy with the cardboard sign is no longer a beggar." Miriam's knees trembled. She walked to the gate again, and this time she saw what the world now saw. Samir, not in rags, but in a tailored suit. A car with tinted windows stood behind him. Bodyguards flanked him. His shoes gleamed. His watch was gold, but his eyes still carried the fire of hunger, the memory of rainwater meals, the pain of sleeping on cold ground. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Mama," he said softly. "I returned." Her lips trembled. "But how?" He didn't answer with words. He opened the trunk of his car. Inside were bags. Dozens. Rice, oil, beans, books, medicine, and at the top, wrapped carefully in cloth, a small plaque, engraved with words that made Miriam choke. "For the woman who fed me when the world walked past." Tears blurred her vision. "Samir," she whispered. Why bring this to me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said words that cut deeper than any wound. "Because, Mama, the same hands that stole my childhood use your name to do it." Miriam staggered back. "No!" Her chest burned. Her knees weakened. But Samir stepped closer, eyes unblinking. "You saved me once, but you must now save yourself. Because what I uncovered links you to the very hunger that nearly killed me." Her hands shook violently. Her lips could barely form the words. What do you mean?" Samir pulled the notebook from his pocket. He opened to the last page. And there, scrawled in thick, dark ink, was her name. Miriam. Her world collapsed. Her legs gave way. She clutched her chest. And for the first time, she could not tell if she was a savior or the sinner. That night, she sat alone in her classroom. The children's drawings still lined the walls. A chalkboard still bore the words of yesterday's lesson. Kindness is never wasted. But her mind was spinning. Was it wasted? Had she lived a lie? Had every grain of rice she served been soaked in stolen wealth? And if so, could any good she had done still matter? Her tears fell onto the floor. Her hands covered her face. Her heart prayed silently. Ya Allah, did I save him? Or did I betray him? And as the night deepened, a knock echoed at the gate once again. But this time it wasn't Samir. It was someone else. Someone whose name, when she heard it, made her blood run cold. But who was it? Why had Samir returned now, as a man of power? And what dark truth was buried beneath Miriam's own name? One that could shatter everything she thought she knew about mercy, about loyalty, and about love. But rarely do we see a person take off their own crown, to place it on the head of one they once ignored. The elders stood in silence. The fire crackled. The air was thick with history and with judgment. One of the kings leaned forward. He looked at Samir. "Boy, do you wish to rule?" Samir's voice was steady. "I only wish for no child to sleep on the ground hungry. I only wish for no boy to beg in the rain." Another queen spoke, her eyes turning to Miriam. "Woman, do you wish to rise?" Miriam held her breath, then said softly, "Only if I can take the forgotten with me." The final elder stood. Her crown shimmered under the torchlight. Then rise together. She lifted a small carved bowl. Inside were two items, a tattered scarf and a silver ring. She placed the ring on Miriam's finger, the scarf around Samir's neck, and declared, "You will not be rulers. You will be restorers. The streets shall follow you, and the future shall call you its parents." When they returned to Lagos, the world had already heard. Headlines blazed across radios and screens. Samir and Miriam appointed restorers of Beggar. First time a beggar boy and widow given royal legacy. The boy with the scarf now leads a nation of orphans. But at the shelter, nothing changed. Miriam still tied her wrapper and cooked rice with her hands. Samir still swept the courtyard. Children still ran barefoot between broken swings. But now, there were more of them. Dozens, then hundreds. And every child that entered the gate touched the scarf on the wall. They whispered before crossing, "Thank you, Brother Samir." But peace has enemies. And betrayal always wears a familiar face. His name was Femi. A young man Miriam had raised herself. She had given him a bed when his father threw him out. She taught him to read, trusted him to manage donations, trusted him with her own keys. But Femi saw the rising fame, the visits of journalists, the whispers of power, and he wanted it for himself. So one night, he copied their name, created a false charity, signed fake contracts, and siphoned the donations meant for orphans. When Miriam confronted him, she trembled with disbelief. "Femi, my son, why?" He only smirked. "You turned this place into a temple. I only collected the offerings." Samir's fists clenched. He wanted to strike him, but Miriam held his arm. Her voice cracked. "Leave." But leaving was not enough. Femi went to press. He told them lies. That Miriam was laundering money. That Samir was pretending to be an orphan. That the shelter was just another scam. and the city listened. Donors pulled out. Trucks of rice stopped coming. Volunteers vanished. And social media spat venom. Maybe the saints of the shelter weren't so holy. The children felt it. They ate half bowls instead of full. The women whispered. The air grew heavy. And just when Miriam thought it couldn't break further, her labor began. 9 months swollen. 9 months carrying a child she never thought she'd live to see. Her body gave way. That night, the rains came. The roof leaked. The courtyard flooded. And Miriam screamed on a thin mattress in the prayer room. No ambulance came. No doctor knocked. Just women with trembling hands. One boiled water. Another sang lullabies. Samir sat by her side, drenched in sweat, holding her hand as if it was a rope keeping her from drowning. Hours dragged. Her cries turned hoarse. And then, just before dawn, a cry pierced the shelter. Not Miriam's. A baby's. Small. Fragile. Alive. The women wept. Samir cut the cord with his own pocket knife, washed his hands in rainwater, and whispered into the newborn's ear, "Welcome, my queen. You are born of ashes and light, and no one can take your name." Miriam held the child to her chest. Tears ran down her face. Her voice broke. Her name is Rama. Mercy. But mercy is always tested. The very next day, a letter arrived. A court summons. The Falad board, now fully corrupt, had sued Miriam. They accused her of fraud, of faking her story, of inventing Samir to gain sympathy. They demanded she hand over her shares. And in whispers darker than ink, they claimed her child was a stain on the family bloodline. Samir stormed out of the shelter. He gathered lawyers. He rallied old street boys. He marched with placards outside the courthouse. Justice for Miriam. Rama deserves peace. But Miriam, she stayed inside. She rocked her child, her eyes empty, her heart broken. "If the world wants to erase me," she said, "let them try. But they cannot erase what we built in hearts." And then something shifted, not from the top, from below. The people rose. The taxi drivers who had once eaten at the shelter. The nurses whose siblings had been fed there. The teachers who remembered Samir's speeches under the mango tree. They flooded social media. They created tribute videos, shared photos of rice pots, posted stories of nights they had slept safe under Miriam's roof. Hashtag spread like fire. Hashtag Rama deserves peace. Hashtag Miriam is truth. Hashtag Samir the restorer. And the world noticed. Foreign embassies issued statements. Celebrities reposted. Suddenly, silence from the Falad board. The lawsuit vanished. And in its place came an invitation. Not from the court, from the world. The Rebuild Circle, an international foundation, offered to fund 10 shelters across Africa. But only if Miriam would speak. Only if she would tell her story on the world stage. She hesitated. Her name had been dragged. Her child threatened. Her heart broken. But then she looked at Rama. The baby smiled in her sleep. Miriam whispered, "We walk through fire, so the next one can walk in peace." 6 months later, Miriam stood before thousands in Geneva. No makeup, no gold, just her white robe, and Rama in her arms. Her voice was soft, but it shook the hall like thunder. "I was saved by a boy the world ignored. I was betrayed by blood. I was broken by lies. But I rose not alone. I rose with hands the world had once despised. If you are hungry, forgotten, hated, know this. You are not broken. You are chosen, and mercy lives in you." The hall erupted. Her words went viral. Back in Lagos, the shelter was repainted. On the gate, they hung a plaque. "House of Rama, where forgotten seed bloom." And Samir, he finally accepted the title. Not king, not senator, not president, just Baba Samir. He stayed at the shelter, built swings, fixed leaking roofs, told bedtime stories under kerosene lamps. And every night Rama, now walking, curled beside him. "Uncle," she would say, "tell me the story where you saved Mama." And he always smiled. "No, Rama, the one where she saved me." So if you think goodness is wasted, it's not. If you think prayers go unheard, they don't. If you think saving one life cannot change the world, you are wrong. Because Allah sees, the world remembers, and legacy always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Comment Rama. If you believe mercy is stronger than revenge, share this with someone who has ever felt invisible. Tell us, have you ever been saved by a stranger? Your story could be the light someone else is waiting for.